Hello everybody, Jesse here. So for this flipped lesson, I am going to be introducing John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men to a ninth grade classroom. I feel that this is an easier way to do things, seeing as the book focuses a lot on the American history revolving around the Great Depression, as well as the lifestyle of things during the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. This is information a lot of students at this age might not be fully familiar with, so I feel like it's a very good thing to start with by going back and just providing some subtle details and background on the situation which the story was written and on the author. That way, when the students do get into the aspect of actually reading the text, they should be able to comprehend and understand the elements that are happening, as well as the reasons why the things are happening in the situation around them. So to jump in, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the maps of the Great Depression here. As we can see right here, we have a map showing the dust storm damage from 1930 to 40. We can see the major aspect of it took part down here in New Mexico, Oklahoma, Texas, down in the southern portion of the country. But we can see that there were areas damaged by dust storms all the way up into our small little area of South Dakota here. We can see that even the Sioux Falls and the southeastern South Dakota area, as well as almost all of Nebraska, was damaged pretty heavily from the dust storm and things that happened. Go through again and look at different areas where things took place. I like this idea just because it does allow students to go through and understand the areas in which the book's taking place and in which the real major effects of the dust storm were occurring during the Great Depression for different people. And this goes into play with our story very well. So I just like students to be able to look through this. When we get to class, one of the assignments we will be doing is having students go through and map out the states which were affected by the Dust Bowl, as well as label the epicenter of the Dust Bowl on a pre-drawn out American map for them to use. Alright, so now we've gone ahead and covered what we have seen for the Dust Bowl and the geography of America. There's much more to go into it, but I feel like this is a good intro for the students. Alright, now moving on from our geographical background on the novel, I'd like for us to take a brief look at some different biography examples of our author, John Steinbeck. As we can see up here, John Steinbeck was born in 1902, lived in 1968, so he would have been at his prime in his 20s or so, during this Great Depression. He would have been at his main working years where he's trying to really build up success in a life. So this era really would have impacted him, and it also would have greatly impacted his writing clearly going forward. So from this point, I would like our students to jump in and go ahead and do some bit of background research on John Steinbeck. I feel this is important for students because it will help them relate to the novel by relating to the author and what he was experiencing and how he is sort of relating his life experiences into his works and how that plays out for the plot and everything right there. So what I'd like students to do is go through the website I have put out for them and go ahead and just jot down about 5 interesting facts they can on John Steinbeck's life, any quotes they might find interesting, just 5 facts that they can jot down and bring to class so that we can then use a class discussion period to go through and go over the John Steinbeck stuff and share with each other so that we can all as a class have a better understanding of what is transpiring for real life people during this time. Alright, so now we've covered that. I think the main thing we need to do now is to actually cover the American history aspect of the Great Depression. And one way I'd like to begin by doing this is by showing visuals to the class. We've all seen these pictures of the Great Depression in the past, but when we actually take that and look at them and then relate back to information and then come back and look at the pictures, I think the students will have a clearer, more concise understanding of what life was really like for people during this time, and will better be able to pick up on what Steinbeck is trying to get across in his book. This is one of the more famous pictures right here, the mother and her children at a camp, transient camp right there. Lots of people had to stay on those, nowhere to go, so I feel like these visuals will really help us get a cooking on this. Another picture of that. We see here another family in a camp hobo-like setting. People at a soup kitchen line, rundown shack. There's a lot of different stuff here. So I'd ask the students just to take 5 or 6 minutes going through pictures of the Great Depression to really get a feel for what things are like to actually see pictures like this that show a sort of transient camp set up outside of a major metropolitan area where people who were too poor to actually afford housing had to live as their community. They were their own separate towns in a ways, and me personally, I did not understand this sort of thing when I first read of Mice and Men. So I'd like my students to go through and look at these pictures first to really get an understanding and a visual image of what the Great Depression looks like before we go ahead and jump into our facts about the Great Depression. I do have a couple different sites pulled up. I have one with 50 interesting facts, and I do have a History Channel one that includes a little video as well as information, detailed information about different areas, the stock market crash, the Dust Bowl, just the different political environment. And I think that going through this will really help people understand. This New Deal should be very beneficial for students in understanding the plot and the structure of John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men, which we will be reading. So much like we did with the John Steinbeck aspect, I would like students to jot down 5 interesting facts that they are able to take away from this reading that they have ahead of time and into their research. I'd like them to write down 5 interesting facts about the Great Depression. It doesn't have to be about the Great Depression. It just simply has to be about the era. You could focus on the Dust Bowl. You could focus on the political climate. You can focus on the New Deal. All I want is for students to be actively engaged and researching this period of history prior to us reading this book. By doing this, we'll be able to come together as a class, have a meaningful discussion, and be able to kind of ease our way into the plot and the context, especially the setting of the book that we are about to read. And me as the teacher, I will then be able to see what students are struggling with, answer questions, and guide them to proper places to help them get a better understanding for what we are trying to do here. So this lesson consists of very little reading as far as the actual book. This lesson is meant specifically to differentiate the instruction by using the internet, the FLIPS resources, and then by using groups and assessments in the classroom when we do get to that point. This is simply an introductory lesson, and my hopes by doing this is that the students will be better prepared to jump into the material and actually read and actually comprehend the story when we do get there. Thank you.